I am 26 years old and a woman. My relationship with my mother has always been complicated. To the outside world, she was a saint. She was the head of the charity committee at her church, a constant volunteer, and the first person to bring a casserole to a grieving neighbor. At home, she was a quiet storm of expectations and control. Her love was a currency, and you had to earn it every single day. If you failed, you paid with guilt. The biggest issue between us was my desire for independence. I had a decent job as a graphic designer, and I was saving money to move out and get my own place. This goal was a constant source of friction. She saw it not as a natural step for an adult, but as a rejection of her and the family. She would say things like, "Why rush to leave? Don't you love being here with us?" Or, "It's so expensive out there. You'll be struggling. Is that what you want?" Last year, she came to me with a proposal. She had found a small condo for sale in a decent neighborhood. She told me she wanted to help. She said she would provide the down payment as a gift. A very generous gift. I was hesitant. I knew her gifts always came with strings, invisible at first, but they would tighten around you over time. "Mom, I can't accept that," I said. "It's too much money. I want to do this on my own." She put on her wounded face. It was a look she had perfected over decades. Her eyes would get misty, and her lower lip would tremble just slightly. "So my help isn't good enough for you?" she asked, her voice soft and full of hurt. "I'm just trying to be a good mother. I see you working so hard, and I want to make it easier." Is that so wrong? My father and my sister, Becca, were there. They immediately jumped in. "Honey, your mother is just trying to help," my dad said. "It's a wonderful offer." "Yeah, stop being so ungrateful," Becca added, not even looking up from her phone. "Some people would kill for that kind of help." I felt cornered. They made me feel like I was being difficult and proud for no reason. The pressure was immense. In the end, I caved. I accepted the gift. The process was a blur of paperwork she handled almost entirely on her own. She would just put documents in front of me and say, "Sign here." I was working long hours, and honestly, I was overwhelmed. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. Living in the condo was not the freedom I had imagined. It was just a different kind of cage. She had a key. She would show up unannounced to check on things. She would rearrange my furniture while I was at work because she thought it looked better her way. She would comment on the food in my fridge. "You're eating this processed stuff? I'll bring you some real food tomorrow." Every conversation started with, "After all I've done for you," or ended with, "You should be a little more appreciative." The down payment was not a gift. It was a debt I was expected to repay with eternal gratitude and obedience. This brought us to Easter Sunday. The whole family was gathered at my parents' house. The air was thick with the smell of baked ham and my mother's cloying perfume. She had been telling everyone at church and all our relatives about her incredible generosity. She had bought her daughter a condominium. She was the perfect mother. During lunch, my Aunt Carol turned to me. "Your mother told us about the lovely condo, Laura," she said. "You are such a lucky girl. She is just the most generous person I know." I just smiled weakly and nodded. Yes, it was very nice of her. My mother, who was sitting at the head of the table, beamed. "Oh, it was nothing," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "What's money when it comes to your children's happiness? I just want her to be safe and secure." I felt a familiar knot tighten in my stomach. Later, as I was helping clear the dishes, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "You didn't seem very enthusiastic when Carol brought up the condo," she said, her voice low and sharp. "I said it was nice of you," I replied, keeping my back to her as I rinsed a plate. "You said it was nice," she scoffed. "I gave you a home, Laura. A simple thank you in front of the family would have been appropriate. You make me look foolish when you're not properly grateful." I turned around to face her. I was tired. So deeply tired of this endless performance. "Mom, I thank you all the time," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "But it doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like something you hold over my head." Her face hardened. The soft, charitable mask she wore in public melted away, revealing the cold anger beneath. "Hold it over your head," she hissed. "How dare you? After everything I have sacrificed for you, for this family, you have no idea what real sacrifice is. You are a spoiled, ungrateful child." "I'm not a child," I said, finding a sliver of courage. "And I'm not ungrateful. I just want to live my own life without feeling like I owe you for every breath I take." That was when she did it. Her hand flew up and she slapped me, hard, across the face. The sting was sharp and immediate, but the shock was worse. My own mother had just hit me. In my entire life, she had never laid a hand on me. Her control was always psychological. This was a new, terrifying line she had crossed. The kitchen went silent. My father and Becca had walked in just in time to see it. My dad's eyes were wide with shock. Becca just stared, a small, almost imperceptible smirk on her face. My mother looked at her own hand as if it had betrayed her. Then her eyes met mine, and they were filled not with regret, but with fury. "Now look what you made me do," she whispered. That was it. That was the moment something inside me broke. Or maybe it was the moment something was finally pieced together. All the years of manipulation, the guilt, the control, it all clicked into place. I felt a strange calm wash over me. The sting on my cheek was a dull throb, a physical reminder of a wound that had been festering for years. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just looked at her, then at my father, who was frozen in place, and at my sister, who was clearly enjoying the show. I turned around, picked up my purse from the counter, and walked out of the kitchen. I walked through the living room, past my confused aunts and uncles, and out the front door. I didn't say a word. I just left. As I drove away, I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I was never going back. Not to that house, not to that family, not to that life. The slap wasn't just an act of violence. It was a declaration of war. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight back. She wanted me to be grateful. I decided I would give her a reason to wish she had never asked for my gratitude at all. 2 days later, her church called her. But first, I had some work to do. The first hour in the car was a blur. I drove aimlessly, tears finally streaming down my face, hot and angry. The slap echoed in my mind, not just the sound of it, but the feeling, the raw humiliation. The way my mother's eyes had blamed me for her own loss of control. "Look what you made me do," the classic anthem of the abuser. It was so clear now, as if a fog had lifted. I finally pulled into a nearly empty parking lot of a grocery store that had closed for the holiday. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and just breathed. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Leaving was not enough. For years, I had tried to shrink myself to keep the peace. I had accepted the barbed comments, the intrusions, the emotional blackmail. I had convinced myself it was just how she is, but a hand to the face was not something you could explain away. It was a physical line drawn, and I was now on the other side of it. I couldn't go back to my condo. She had a key. She would be there, waiting with either fake tears or more rage. I needed a safe place. I scrolled through my phone and found my friend Sarah's number. Sarah, 27F, was my rock. She had seen my mother in action at a few events and had always said, "Laura, that's not normal." I had always brushed it off. I called her. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, happy Easter. How's the family gathering?" she asked cheerfully. My voice broke when I tried to answer. "Sarah, can I come over?" Her tone shifted instantly. "Of course. What's wrong? Are you okay?" "Not really," I whispered. "My mom," she hit me. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "I'm on my way," Sarah said, but I stopped her. "No, I'm already in my car. I'm fine to drive. I just need somewhere to go. My door is open. Come straight here. Don't go back to your apartment," she said, her voice firm. "Just come here." Walking into Sarah's apartment felt like entering a sanctuary. She took one look at the red mark still visible on my cheek, and her face filled with a quiet fury on my behalf. She didn't press for details. She just made me a cup of tea, gave me a blanket, and let me sit on her couch in silence until I was ready to talk. She called me ungrateful. I finally said, the words tasting like poison, because I wasn't performing my gratitude for the condo with enough enthusiasm for her audience. Sarah shook her head slowly. That condo was never a gift, Laura. It was a leash. I know that now, I said. I think I knew it all along, but I didn't want to admit it. It was easier to pretend. But I'm done pretending. I looked at her, my eyes probably looking a little wild. I'm not just going to stay away, Sarah. I'm going to untangle myself from her completely. And I'm going to make sure she can't do this to me or anyone else ever again. Sarah listened patiently as I laid out the whole story, from the pressure to accept the gift to the constant invasions of my privacy. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. What do you mean, untangle yourself? She asked. What are you going to do? The condo, I said, my mind starting to work. It all comes back to the condo. That's her leverage. It's the thing she uses to prove to the world what a wonderful mother she is. I need to sever that tie, but I don't even know how. She handled all the paperwork. A seed of an idea began to sprout. My mother was meticulous, but she was also arrogant. She believed she was smarter than everyone else. She might have gotten sloppy. Did you ever read what you signed? Sarah asked gently. I felt a flush of shame. No, not really. She would just shove a stack of papers at me and say, this is the standard stuff for the title, or this is for the bank. I was so busy with that big project at work. I just signed. Okay, Sarah said, non-judgmentally. So, the first step is to get copies of all that paperwork. The loan agreement, the title, everything. You need to know exactly what you signed. The next morning, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was no longer a victim fleeing a bad situation. I was an investigator building a case. I left Sarah's apartment and went to a coffee shop with my laptop. I didn't go to my condo. I couldn't face it yet. The first thing I did was search online for the county recorder's office to see how I could get a copy of the deed to my property. It was public record. That was a start. But the loan was the real mystery. My mother had presented it as her giving me the down payment from her savings. But was that the truth? My credit score was good, but I didn't have a long credit history. I had assumed she co-signed the mortgage with me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no concrete details. She had shielded me from the entire process, framing it as her taking the burden off my shoulders. Now I saw it was to keep me in the dark. I found the folder of documents I had from the closing. I had tossed it in a drawer and forgotten about it. I needed to go back to the condo to get it. The thought made my stomach clench. She could be there. She might have already been there. I called Sarah. I have to go back to my place, I said. I need the folder with the closing documents. I'll go with you, she said immediately. No way you're going alone. An hour later, we stood outside my condo door. I took a deep breath and used my key. The air inside was still and silent. Everything was exactly as I had left it, which was a relief. No signs of a maternal intrusion. I went straight to the desk in my small office space and found the folder. It was thick with papers. Sarah stood guard by the door, her phone in her hand, ready to call for help if needed. Find it, she asked. I think so, I said, clutching the folder to my chest. Let's go. Back at Sarah's, we spread the documents out on her dining table. It was a daunting pile of legalese. There was the deed, the title insurance, and a thick packet labeled mortgage loan agreement. I started reading. My name was listed as the primary borrower. My mother's name was nowhere on the loan itself. That was strange. How had I been approved for a loan of that size on my own? My salary was decent, but not that high. I kept reading, my eyes scanning the numbers. Loan amount, interest rate, monthly payment. It all seemed standard. Then I saw it. A section titled Source of Down Payment. I had assumed my mother wrote a check from her savings. But the document stated something different. It listed a gift letter as proof of funds for the down payment, which was normal. But then there was an attached document, a bank statement from an account I didn't recognize. The account was not in my mother's name. It was a joint account, but the names were blacked out with a marker, except for one. Laura Jensen. My name. Sarah, look at this, I said, my voice trembling. This bank statement, it's for an account I've never seen before. It has my name on it, but the other name is redacted.
Sarah leaned in.
Why would it be redacted? And where did this account come from? I had no idea. I flipped through more pages. Tucked deep inside the miscellaneous section was a document I did remember signing. It was a single page giving my mother limited power of attorney to facilitate the real estate transaction on my behalf. I had thought it was just to allow her to talk to the real estate agent and the title company for me. I had no idea it could be used to open a bank account. She opened a bank account in my name, I whispered, the reality of it sinking in. She must have used that power of attorney form. But where did the money in that account come from? Sarah asked, pointing to the statement. It showed a single, large deposit made just 3 days before the closing. The source of the deposit was listed only as a wire transfer from HFG Trust Services. I had never heard of them. This was it. This was the anomaly. The piece that didn't fit. My mother didn't just give me money from her savings. She had created a secret bank account in my name and funded it from a mysterious source. The carefully constructed story of her maternal generosity was beginning to crumble. The gift wasn't just a leash, it was a lie. A complex, calculated lie. And I had the paperwork to start proving it. My fear was slowly being replaced by a white-hot anger. She hadn't just slapped me. She had enmeshed me in a financial web I didn't understand, all for the sake of her own ego. Now I was going to unravel it thread by thread. The first step was to find out what HFG Trust Services was. A quick search online revealed it was a financial management company that handled trusts, estates, and charitable funds. It was a large, reputable firm. Why would a wire transfer from them be funding my down payment? It made no sense. My next call was to the bank where the secret joint account had been opened. Getting information was like pulling teeth. I explained that I was the account holder and that I had questions about its origin. I'm sorry, Ms. Jensen, the polite but firm voice on the phone said. For security reasons, I can't provide detailed information about account creation over the phone. You would need to come into a branch with 2 forms of identification. Can you at least tell me who the other person on the account is? I asked, my frustration growing. My copy of the statement has the name blacked out. I cannot disclose that information, ma'am. Our privacy policy is very strict. It was a dead end. But it also confirmed my suspicion that something was being hidden. If this was all above board, why the secrecy? Defeated for the moment, I decided to shift my focus. I needed to understand the legal implications of that power of attorney form I had so foolishly signed. I didn't have money for a high-powered lawyer, so I searched for legal aid services in my city. I found one that offered free consultations. I made an appointment for the next day. That evening, my phone, which I had kept on silent, buzzed incessantly. A string of texts from my father. Laura, please call me. Your mother is worried sick. This has gone on long enough. You need to come home and sort this out. We're family. We don't do this to each other. Each message felt like a small jab, reinforcing the family narrative that I was the one causing the problem. I ignored them. A little while later, a text from Becca came through. Mom is a wreck, thanks to you. I can't believe how selfish you're being. After she bought you a condo, you should be ashamed. I stared at the message, feeling a surge of anger. Becca had always been my mother's loyal soldier, the golden child who could do no wrong. She enjoyed her position and was always quick to put me in my place to maintain it. I decided to reply to her. She slapped me, Becca, I typed. Her reply was almost instantaneous. So? You provoked her. You know how she gets. You should have just been grateful and kept your mouth shut. It's not that hard. I felt the blood drain from my face. She was defending it. She was defending a physical assault. That was the moment I knew my sister was a lost cause. She was not just an enabler, she was an active participant in my mother's toxicity. I blocked her number. I couldn't deal with her venom right now. Finally, I decided to call my father. I needed to know where he stood. He answered immediately.
Laura.
Thank God. Where are you? Are you okay? He asked, his voice a mix of relief and anxiety. I'm fine, Dad, I said, my tone flat. You need to come home, he pleaded. Your mother, she's not doing well. She regrets what happened. She just wants to talk to you. She slapped me, I said, the words feeling heavy and stark. He was silent for a long moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end. I know, he finally said, his voice dropping to a whisper. And it was wrong. There's no excuse for it. But you know your mother. She's been under a lot of stress. She didn't mean it. There it was. The excuse. The minimization. She didn't mean it? It looked like she meant it. And Becca seems to think I deserved it. He sighed heavily. It was the sound of a man who had spent a lifetime avoiding conflict. Becca is just upset. And your mother, she loves you, Laura. She was just trying to do a good thing for you with the condo, and she felt like you were throwing it back in her face. The condo is the problem, Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Something isn't right about it. I've been looking at the paperwork. I heard a sharp intake of breath. What paperwork? Laura, don't go stirring up trouble. Your mother handled everything to make it easy for you.
Just let it be.
Apologize to her, and let's put this all behind us. I felt a profound sense of disappointment. He wasn't going to help me. He was on her side, not because he thought she was right, but because keeping the peace was more important to him than anything, even his own daughter's well-being. Apologize to her? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She hit me, and you want me to apologize? To keep the peace, he said, his voice rising in desperation. Is it so much to ask? You know how this will tear the family apart. Just be the bigger person here. I've been the bigger person my entire life, I said, my voice cold as ice. I've been swallowing her insults and her control for 26 years to keep the peace, but peace looks a lot like her getting everything she wants and me getting walked all over. I'm done, Dad. I'm not apologizing. And I am going to find out what's going on with this condo. I hung up before he could reply. I blocked his number too. For now, I needed silence. I needed to be free from their voices telling me I was the one in the wrong. The conversation with my father was the final confirmation. I was completely on my own in this.
And that was okay.
It was better to be alone than to be surrounded by people who would hand you back to your abuser just to have a quiet dinner. The next day, I went to my legal aid appointment. I sat across from a young, sharp-eyed lawyer named Ms. Diaz. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, laying out the documents on her desk, the power of attorney, the redacted bank statement, the loan agreement. She listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each detail. She picked up the power of attorney form. This is a limited power of attorney, specifically for the real estate transaction, she said. However, the language is a bit broad. To facilitate the transaction could be interpreted in many ways, including opening an account to handle the funds. It's aggressive, but not necessarily illegal on its own, especially since you signed it. My heart sank. So, she was allowed to do it. Allowed to open an account? Maybe. But the real questions are, where did the money come from, and why was the other account holder's name blacked out? And was that account opened with your full knowledge and consent? Did you understand that you were entering into a joint account with someone? No, I said firmly. She never mentioned a joint account. She just said she was giving me the money. Okay, Ms. Diaz said, leaning forward. This is where it gets murky. If she used this POA to open an account without your full understanding, that could be fraudulent misrepresentation. And this mysterious funding source, HFG Trust Services, is a major red flag. She tapped the redacted bank statement. The fact that the other name is blacked out is suspicious. It suggests someone is trying to hide their involvement. Your first priority is to find out who that person is. Go to the bank in person. They can't refuse to give you information about your own account if you're standing right there with your ID. Find out the co-owner's name and ask them for the full details on that incoming wire transfer from HFG Trust Services. Ms. Diaz gave me a clear set of instructions, a roadmap for the next phase of my investigation. Walking out of her office, I felt empowered. The law might be on my side. I had a path forward. The knot of fear in my stomach was still there, but now it was mingled with a fierce, determined energy. My mother had built her kingdom on secrets and control. I was about to bring it all into the light. The truth about the condo was the key, and I was going to find it no matter what it cost me. Armed with Ms. Diaz's advice, I drove to the nearest branch of the bank that held the secret account. My heart was pounding as I walked in. This felt like a point of no return. I sat down at a desk across from a personal banker, a middle-aged man named David. I took a deep breath and explained my situation. Hello. My name is Laura Jensen. An account was opened in my name at this bank a little over a year ago to facilitate a real estate purchase. I have some questions about it. He typed my name into his computer. Yes, I see the account here. A joint checking account. It looks like it's been dormant for a while, with just a minimal balance. That's right, I said. I need to know who the other owner on the account is. My copy of the statement had the name redacted. He looked at his screen. His eyebrows furrowed slightly. The joint owner is listed as Eleanor Jensen. Eleanor. My mother. Of course. It was so simple and so devious. She had opened an account with me, making herself a co-owner, giving her full access and control. The money was never truly mine. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Thank you. Now, can you give me the details of the large deposit made into that account? It was a wire transfer. He clicked a few more times. Yes, I see it. A wire transfer from HFG Trust Services. He read off the date and the exact amount, which matched the down payment. I need to know who authorized that transfer, I said. Who at HFG Trust Services sent the money? He shook his head. I'm afraid I can't see that. Our records only show the name of the sending institution, not the individual who initiated it. You would have to contact HFG Trust Services for that information. It was another partial answer, but it was enough. My mother was the co-owner. She had been in control of the money the entire time. The gift was an illusion. She had simply moved money into a shared account that I barely knew existed and then moved it out to pay for the down payment. The money was never mine. My next step was to figure out the HFG Trust Services connection. Why was a financial management firm sending my mother money? I knew she didn't have a personal trust fund. Her family was not wealthy. So, where did the connection lie? Then it hit me. The church. My mother's life revolved around her church, and specifically, her role as the head of the charity and outreach committee. She managed all their fundraising drives and benevolent funds. What if HFG was the firm the church used to manage its endowment or charitable accounts? It was a terrifying thought. If she had taken money from the church, that wasn't just manipulative. It was criminal. While I was processing this, my phone started ringing. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Laura? It's your Aunt Carol. My heart sank. The flying monkeys were being deployed. Hi, Aunt Carol, I said cautiously. Honey, I just spoke with your mother, she said, her voice dripping with concern. She is absolutely beside herself with worry. She told me what happened, that there was a silly argument and you ran off. She's heartbroken that you haven't called. It wasn't a silly argument, Aunt Carol, I said firmly. She slapped me. There was a pause. Well, she said, her tone shifting slightly. She told me you said some very hurtful things to her. You know how she is, Laura. She has a big heart, and she's very sensitive. And after all she did for you with that beautiful condo, you have to admit, it sounds very ungrateful. I couldn't believe it. My mother had already spun the story, painting herself as the sensitive victim and me as the cruel, ungrateful daughter. And they were all buying it. I have to go, I said, my voice cold. Laura, wait. Just talk to her. Whatever this is, it can be fixed. Families fight. But you don't throw your family away over a little disagreement. This was not a little disagreement, I said and hung up. I blocked her number too. The walls were closing in. My mother was circling the wagons, reinforcing her narrative with everyone in her orbit. She was isolating me, painting me as the villain before I even had a chance to speak. The pressure was immense. For a fleeting moment, I thought about what my dad said. Maybe I should just apologize. Just smooth things over and go back to the way things were. It would be easier. But then I remembered the sting of the slap. I remembered Becca's smirk. I remembered my dad's weak plea to keep the peace. Easier was not better. Easier was how I had ended up in this mess in the first place.
No.
I was going to see this through. The harassment escalated. The next day, I received a voicemail from my Uncle Mark, then an email from a cousin. They all carried the same tune. My mother was a saint, I was being cruel, and I needed to stop this nonsense and apologize. Each message was a small cut, designed to wear me down. Then came the call from my mother herself. I was sitting in Sarah's apartment, staring at my laptop screen, trying to figure out how to approach HFG Trust Services, when my phone rang. The screen flashed Mom. My blood ran cold. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. I steeled myself and listened. Her voice was not angry. It was worse. It was dripping with saccharine, manipulative sadness. "Laura, darling," she began. "It's your mother. I don't know where you are, and I am sick with worry. I haven't slept. I know we had a disagreement, and I am so sorry if I overreacted. My emotions just got the better of me. I love you so much, and all I've ever wanted is your happiness. That condo, it was from my heart. Please just call me. Please come home. We can talk this through. Don't let this break our family apart. I love you." It was a masterful performance. She was the loving, worried mother, admitting to a small overreaction while reinforcing the idea that her intentions were pure. She was creating a record, a piece of evidence she could play for others to prove how reasonable she was being and how unreasonable I was for not responding. I didn't fall for it. I saved the voicemail. It was another piece of evidence of her manipulation. I knew I couldn't approach HFG Trust Services directly. They wouldn't give information about a client account to a random stranger. I needed a different angle. I needed someone on the inside. Or someone who used to be. I thought back over the years of attending church events with my mother. She ran her committee with an iron fist. People who disagreed with her tended to disappear from the committee roster. There was one woman I remember distinctly from about 5 or 6 years ago. Her name was Mrs. Gable. She had been the church treasurer for as long as I could remember. She was a quiet, no-nonsense woman who dealt in facts and figures. There had been some kind of falling out between her and my mother over the budget. Soon after, Mrs. Gable stepped down as treasurer, and my mother's close friend took over. At the time, my mother had spun it as Mrs. Gable wanting to retire and spend more time with her grandchildren. But I remembered the tension. What if Mrs. Gable had left because she suspected something? What if she had seen something she didn't like in the way my mother handled the church's money? It was a long shot. I had no idea if she would even talk to me. She was in her late 70s now, and I hadn't seen her in years. But it was the only lead I had. I had to find her. I didn't have her number, and I couldn't ask anyone in the family. I started with a simple online search. I found an old church directory from a decade ago, archived on their website. It listed her name, Margaret Gable, and an address. I wasn't sure if she still lived there, but it was a place to start. The address was on the other side of town in a quiet, older neighborhood. I felt a surge of nervous energy as I drove there. What was I even going to say? "Hi, you don't know me well, but I think my mother might be a thief, and I'm hoping you'll help me prove it." I parked down the street from the small, tidy brick house listed in the directory. I sat in my car for a full 10 minutes, my hands shaking. This was crazy. She would probably think I was insane and call my mother immediately. But what other choice did I have? I got out of the car and walked up the neat stone pathway to the front door. I rang the doorbell. A few moments later, the door opened, and there she was. Margaret Gable. She looked older, her hair completely white, but her eyes were just as sharp as I remembered. She looked at me with a questioning, but not unkind, expression. "Hello," she said. "Mrs. Gable?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "My name is Laura Jensen. I'm Eleanor Jensen's daughter." Her expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Recognition. And something else. Caution. "I remember you," she said slowly. "You were just a teenager the last time I saw you. What can I do for you, Laura?" This was it. I took a deep breath. "I know this is going to sound strange," I began, "but I need to ask you about the time you spent as the church treasurer. Specifically, about the way the charity funds were managed." Her face became a careful, neutral mask. "That was a long time ago," she said. "I'm not sure what I could tell you. I think my mother is misusing church funds," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "And I think you might be the only person who would have noticed." She stared at me for a long, silent moment. I was sure she was about to close the door in my face. Instead, she unlatched the screen door. "You'd better come inside," she said. I stepped into a living room that looked like it hadn't changed in 50 years. It was immaculate and filled with dark wood furniture and framed photos of children and grandchildren. Mrs. Gable gestured for me to sit on the floral-patterned sofa while she took a seat in a sturdy armchair opposite me. "Now," she said, her voice low and serious, "tell me everything. And don't leave out a single detail." I told her. I told her about the condo, the gift, the pressure, the redacted bank statement, the secret joint account, the wire transfer from HFG Trust Services. And finally, I told her about the slap. I showed her the still faint bruise on my cheek. She listened without interruption, her hands folded calmly in her lap. Her sharp eyes never left my face. When I finished, the room was silent except for the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. "I knew it," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "I always knew something was wrong." She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the careful mask fall away, replaced by a look of grim vindication. "Your mother is a charismatic woman, Laura. She can make people believe anything. She came onto the committee with all these grand ideas for expanding our charity work. Everyone was so impressed." "What happened?" I asked. "She wanted to move our funds," Mrs. Gable explained. "The church had always kept its accounts at a small, local credit union. Your mother argued that we should move to a large investment firm to manage the money. HFG Trust Services. She said it would generate more interest for our charitable work. On the surface, it sounded smart. The board approved it." She leaned forward, her voice dropping even lower. But the statement started getting complicated. HFG sent these glossy, elaborate reports that were hard to decipher. When I was treasurer, I kept my own simple ledger. Every dollar in, every dollar out. When the funds moved to HFG, I tried to keep tracking it, but your mother made it impossible. She insisted all requests for funds go through her. She was the sole point of contact with HFG. I was effectively locked out. "So, you suspected she was doing something?" I asked. "I suspected she was creating a system with no oversight," Mrs. Gable corrected. "I raised concerns with the pastor at the time. I said it was fiscally irresponsible to have one person with that much control and such opaque reporting. Your mother found out. She told the board I was old-fashioned, that I didn't understand modern finances, and that I was standing in the way of progress. She turned everyone against me. It became so unpleasant that I stepped down. It was easier than fighting her. My heart ached for this woman. My mother had done to her exactly what she had done to me, and to everyone who ever questioned her: isolate, discredit, and push them out. After I left," Mrs. Gable continued, "I heard from a friend still on the committee that your mother had established something called the Matriarch Fund. It was supposedly a discretionary fund for her to use for urgent charitable needs without having to wait for a committee vote. The idea was sold as a way to be more responsive. A way to help a family immediately if their house burned down, for example. A discretionary fund. With no oversight. Managed by my mother. Connected to an account at HFG Trust Services. All the pieces clicked into place. The down payment for my condo," I said, my voice shaking with the revelation. "It came from HFG. She used the church's money. The matriarch fund. She didn't give me a gift. She used me to steal from the church. Mrs. Gable nodded slowly, her expression grim. It would be the perfect cover. She gifts her daughter a home, cementing her reputation as a generous, family-oriented woman. But she's using money that isn't hers. And she creates a financial entanglement with you that guarantees your silence and compliance. It's monstrously clever. I felt sick. The scale of her deceit was staggering. It wasn't just about controlling me. It was about funding her public image with stolen money. The slap wasn't just about me being ungrateful. It was the panic of a criminal whose scheme was being questioned. "Can you prove it?" I asked, my voice desperate. "Can we prove this is what she did?" Mrs. Gable stood up and walked over to a large wooden secretary desk in the corner. She unlocked a drawer with a small, ornate key. She rummaged inside for a moment before pulling out a thin file folder. "I was a bookkeeper for 40 years before I retired," she said, walking back toward me. "I don't trust glossy reports. I trust numbers. When I started getting suspicious of your mother, I made copies of the internal financials before the funds were moved to HFG. And I kept a few other things." She opened the folder on the coffee table. Inside were bank statements from the old credit union account, showing the balance right before the transfer to HFG. There were also copies of the minutes from the church board meeting, where the move was approved. And then she pulled out the key artifact. It was a copy of the proposal for the matriarch fund. It was written by my mother. It outlined the purpose of the fund and, crucially, it specified that she would have sole signatory authority for disbursements under a certain amount. There was no requirement for a second signature or for receipts to be submitted for these discretionary payments. It was a blank check. "The board was foolish to approve this," Mrs. Gable said, her voice tight with anger. "But Eleanor can be very persuasive. She painted it as a matter of trust. This was it. This was the proof. This document, combined with the wire transfer to the secret account she had opened in my name, told the whole story. It was a direct line from the church's money to my condo." "What do we do?" I asked, looking up at her. "We don't do anything," Mrs. Gable said gently but firmly. "You do. This is your fight, Laura. You are the victim here, not just of her manipulation, but of her crime. You have the standing to bring this forward. I am just a bitter old woman with a grudge. They would dismiss me, but you are the living proof of her fraud." She slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a letter she had written to the church board right after she resigned, outlining her concerns about the lack of financial controls. They had ignored it. "This is your leverage," she said. "You have my old letter, you have her proposal for the fund, and you have your own bank records. You have the whole story. You need to take it to the current pastor." I stared at the papers, my mind racing. Mrs. Gable was right. I had everything I needed. The fear I had been carrying for days was finally burned away by a cold, clear purpose. My mother had built her entire world on a foundation of lies. I was about to pull the cornerstone. "His name is Pastor Mike," Mrs. Gable said. "He's younger than the last one. Seems like a decent man. But he's a man who values the church's reputation. You need to present this to him in a way that he cannot ignore. Not as a messy family squabble, but as a serious legal and financial threat to the church itself." I gathered the documents, my hands steady now. I looked at this woman, this stranger who had been cast aside by my mother years ago, and felt an immense wave of gratitude. She had given me the weapon I needed to win this war. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how I can ever thank you." She just gave me a small, sad smile. "Don't thank me. Just make it count. Your mother has been getting away with this for far too long. It's time for a reckoning." Leaving Mrs. Gable's house, I felt like a different person. I had walked in as a confused and frightened victim. I was walking out as the bearer of a truth so toxic it could dissolve my mother's entire world. Back at Sarah's, I laid out my plan. I wasn't going to make a hysterical phone call. I was going to be calm, professional, and methodical, just like Mrs. Gable. I drafted an email to Pastor Mike. "Dear Pastor Mike," I wrote. "My name is Laura Jensen, Eleanor Jensen's daughter. I am writing to you about a matter of serious financial concern involving the church's charitable funds and my mother's role as head of the outreach committee. I have discovered evidence of what I believe to be misappropriation of funds. I have documentation to support this claim. I would like to request an urgent and confidential meeting with you to present what I have found. I believe the church is at significant risk. Sincerely, Laura Jensen. It was short, direct, and alarming. I didn't mention the condo. I didn't mention the slap. I framed it entirely as a threat to the church. He would have no choice but to respond. I attached a single document to the email, the copy of Mrs. Gable's ignored letter of concern from 6 years ago. It was a warning shot. It showed that this was not a new issue. I hit send. And then I waited. The response came less than an hour later. Dear Laura, the pastor's email read, "Thank you for reaching out. Your email and the attached letter are deeply concerning. I would of course be happy to meet with you. My schedule is clear tomorrow morning at 10. Please let me know if that works for you. We can meet in my office at the church. Rest assured, this will be handled with the utmost confidentiality. Grace and peace, Pastor Mike." It was happening. The first domino was about to fall. I felt a terrifying thrill. There was no going back now. That night, I barely slept. I kept going over the documents, organizing them into a clear timeline. I rehearsed what I would say. I anticipated the questions he would ask. Sarah was amazing, quizzing me like a lawyer preparing a witness. The next morning, about an hour before I was due to leave for the church, my phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. He must have called her. The pastor must have called her to let her know he was meeting with me. He had promised confidentiality, but maybe his first step was to get her side of the story. My first instinct was to ignore it. But then I realized this was a crucial moment. This was my chance to hear her defense, to witness her panic before she had time to craft a more polished story. This was part of the confrontation. I answered the call. "What have you done?" she shrieked, her voice a venomous torrent. There was no loving, worried mother now. This was pure, undiluted rage. I remained silent. I let her tirade fill the space. "Pastor Mike just called me," she screamed. "He said you sent him an email. That you're making wild accusations about me. About money.
How dare you?
After everything I've done for you, you're trying to ruin me?" "Hello, Mother," I said, my voice eerily calm. The sound of my placid tone seemed to enrage her further. "Don't you hello mother me, you ungrateful little snake. You're going to call him back right now and tell him you were mistaken. Tell him you were emotional and confused. You will cancel that meeting. Do you understand me?" "No," I said simply. There was a stunned silence on the other end. I had never said a flat no to her in my life. "What did you say?" she whispered, her voice trembling with fury. "I said no," I repeated. "I am not canceling the meeting. We're going to talk about the matriarch fund. We're going to talk about HFG Trust Services. And we're going to talk about the down payment for my condo." I heard a sharp, strangled gasp. I had hit the nerve. She knew exactly what I was talking about. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she stammered, her bluster gone, replaced by a frantic, scrambling energy. That was a gift.
From me to you.
It was my money, was it? I asked coolly. Was it your money, or was it the church's money? The money you control from that discretionary fund you created? The one with no oversight. "You are sick," she hissed. "You are a vindictive, hateful child. I gave you everything. I have sacrificed my whole life for you, and this is how you repay me? By trying to destroy my reputation with these disgusting lies." "This isn't about my gratitude anymore, Mom," I said, and for the first time, I felt a surge of power. I was in control. "This is about fraud.
You used me.
You put my name on a secret bank account and funneled stolen money through it. You committed a crime, and you made me a part of it. It's my word against yours," she spat. "I am a respected member of this community. I am a pillar of that church. Who do you think they're going to believe? Me or my unstable, ungrateful daughter who ran away from home after a little family argument. I think they'll believe the bank statements, I said calmly, and the wire transfer records, and the proposal you wrote for the fund that gave you sole authority to move money around without anyone checking. I have it all, Mom. I have the proof. The line went dead quiet. I could hear her ragged breathing. The cornered animal. What do you want, Laura? She finally asked, her voice completely changed. The anger was gone, replaced by a chilling, transactional tone. Is it money? Do you want more money? I can get it. Just tell me what your price is to make this go away. I felt a wave of nausea. She was trying to buy my silence. She thought this was about money. She truly did not understand me at all. I don't want your money, I said, my voice hard as steel. Especially since it's not yours to give. I want you to face the consequences of what you did. I'm going to my meeting, Mom, and I'm going to tell him everything. You will regret this, she whispered, and the threat was real and cold. You will tear this family apart, and you'll be left with nothing and no one. I will make sure of it. You already tore this family apart, I said. You did it when you decided your reputation was more important than your integrity. You did it when you used your daughter as a pawn in your scheme. And you did it when you slapped me across the face for daring to question you. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was from adrenaline. The first confrontation was over. I had held my ground. She knew I had her trapped. Now it was time for the final act. I picked up my folder of documents, gave Sarah a determined look, and walked out the door to go to the church. Walking into the church felt surreal. This building had been the backdrop for so much of my childhood, a place associated with my mother's public sainthood. Now I was walking in to dismantle that image completely. Pastor Mike's office was modest, with a large wooden desk and shelves filled with books. He stood up when I entered, his face etched with concern. He was in his early 40s, with a kind but serious demeanor. Laura, thank you for coming in, he said, gesturing to a chair. Please have a seat. Thank you for seeing me, Pastor, I said, sitting down and placing my folder on my lap. I'll be direct, he began. I received your email. I also received a call from your mother a short while ago. She is very distressed. She claims you are making things up because you are angry with her over a family matter. I'm sure that's what she said, I replied calmly. But this isn't about a family matter. It's about the church's money. May I show you what I found? He nodded, leaning forward. Please. I opened the folder and began. I laid out the documents one by one, explaining each one clearly and concisely, just as I had rehearsed. I started with the proposal for the matriarch fund, written in my mother's own hand. I pointed out the clause giving her sole discretionary power. This fund was approved by the board about 5 years ago, I explained. It effectively gave my mother a blank check, as long as the individual withdrawals were under a certain threshold. Next, I showed him the redacted bank statement for the account she had opened in my name and the official, unredacted version I had gotten from the bank, showing her as the joint owner. She opened this account with me without my full knowledge of her co-ownership, using a limited power of attorney I signed, I said. She controlled it completely. Then, I presented the proof of the wire transfer from HFG Trust Services into that secret account. The amount matched the down payment for my condo to the dollar. HFG manages the church's funds, including the matriarch fund, correct? I asked. Pastor Mike's face had gone pale. He stared at the documents, his jaw tight. Yes, that's correct, he said quietly. So, my mother used her position to wire money from a church fund into a secret account she controlled, and then used that money to purchase a major asset, all under the guise of giving me a gift. Finally, I slid the copy of Mrs. Gable's 6-year-old letter across the desk. This is a letter former Treasurer Margaret Gable sent to the board when she resigned. She warned you this could happen. She warned you about the lack of oversight. The church was put on notice years ago, and nothing was done. Pastor Mike picked up the letter and read it. He put it down and looked at me, his eyes filled with a dawning horror. He was silent for a full minute, processing the undeniable story the documents told. I had no idea, he finally stammered. This letter, it was before my time here. I've never seen it. I believe you, I said. But it's in the church records. And it proves that my mother's actions weren't just a one-time mistake. It was a systematic abuse of trust that the church leadership enabled, whether intentionally or not. He steepled his fingers, his mind clearly racing. What your mother has done, if this is all true, this is embezzlement. It's a serious crime. I know, I said. And she made me an accessory to it without my consent. That is why I am here. I want my name cleared, and I want her to be stopped. He looked at me, his expression shifting from shock to resolve. Laura, I am so deeply sorry. First, for what your mother has done, and second, for the church's failure to have the proper safeguards in place. You have been incredibly brave to bring this forward. He paused, then continued. This requires immediate action. We will need to inform the church board. We will need to freeze the fund and launch a full, independent audit of all the committee's finances going back several years. And your mother, she will have to be removed from her position immediately, pending the outcome of the investigation. I felt a wave of relief, so profound it almost made me dizzy. He believed me. He was going to act. There is one more thing, he said, his voice gentle. Your mother mentioned a family argument. She was very vague.
But you said this wasn't about that.
Looking at you, and looking at this evidence of profound betrayal, I feel there's more to the story that I should know, as your pastor. I hesitated. I had planned to keep the slap private. It felt too personal, too shameful. But looking at his compassionate face, I realized he needed to understand the catalyst. He needed to understand the cruelty that underpinned the crime. She slapped me, I said quietly. At Easter dinner, in front of my father and sister. She called me ungrateful because I wasn't sufficiently performing my gratitude for the condo. That was when I knew I couldn't keep silent anymore. The financial fraud is the crime, but the slap, that's the motive. It's all about control. Pastor Mike closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were filled with a deep sadness. Thank you for telling me that, Laura. It helps me understand the gravity of the situation more fully. This is not just about money. It's a profound moral and spiritual failure. He stood up. I need to make some calls. We will convene an emergency board meeting tonight. Can you make yourself available? It would be best if you were there to present this yourself. What about my mother? I asked. I will call her and inform her that she is suspended from all church duties, effective immediately, and that she is required to be at the meeting tonight as well. She deserves a chance to respond to these allegations directly to the board. My heart pounded. A face-to-face confrontation. With her, the board, the pastor. It was the ultimate showdown. Yes, I said, my voice steady. I'll be there. That evening, I walked back into the church. Sarah came with me, waiting in the car for support. I was terrified but also resolute. I sat at a long conference table in a meeting room. Pastor Mike was at the head of the table. 3 other board members, 2 men and a woman I vaguely recognized, sat with grim expressions. They had clearly been briefed. Then the door opened and my mother walked in. My father was with her, his face ashen.
He wouldn't look at me.
My mother's face was a mask of cold fury and feigned innocence. She looked regal and composed, the wronged matriarch. She sat down directly across from me. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Pastor Mike began, his voice somber. As you know, we are here to discuss a serious allegation that has been brought to my attention by Laura Jensen regarding her mother, Eleanor, and the handling of the Outreach Committee's funds. He turned to me. Laura, would you please walk the board through what you found? With my mother's burning eyes fixed on me, I did it all again. I laid out the documents. I told the story calmly, factually. I didn't let my voice shake. I presented the evidence of the secret account, the wire transfer, the proposal for the matriarch fund. I spoke for 10 minutes, uninterrupted. The room was deathly silent. When I finished, Pastor Mike turned to my mother. Eleanor, You've seen the documents. You've heard the allegation. How do you respond? My mother gave a small, sad laugh. It was a chillingly familiar sound. I respond with shock and with a broken heart, she said, her voice thick with emotion. She looked at the board members, her eyes pleading. My daughter and I had a falling out. She is angry and confused, and she is lashing out. She has taken a beautiful act of love, a mother helping her child buy a home, and twisted it into something ugly and sinister. What about the money, Eleanor? One of the board members, Mr. Harrison, asked bluntly. Where did it come from? It was my personal money, she insisted, looking him straight in the eye. Money I had saved. The wire transfer from HFG was simply a transfer from one of my personal investment accounts that they also manage. It has nothing to do with the church.
It was a bold lie.
She was counting on them not having the ability to prove otherwise in that moment. So, you're saying you have a personal investment account with HFG separate from the church's funds? Pastor Mike asked, his tone skeptical. Yes, of course, my mother said smoothly. This was my moment. The final piece of evidence. That's interesting, I said, my voice cutting through her performance. Because Mrs. Gable, the former treasurer, seemed to think that the Matriarch Fund was the only church-related account managed by HFG under your sole direction. And when I spoke with her, she provided me with this. I slid one last document across the table. It was an annual report summary from HFG for the Matriarch Fund from the previous year. Mrs. Gable had gotten it from a friend still on the committee. It showed the starting balance, the interest earned, and a single large withdrawal. The date and the amount of the withdrawal matched the wire transfer to my down payment account.
Exactly.
My mother's eyes widened as she saw the paper. The color drained from her face.
She was trapped.
Her lie was exposed. Mr. Harrison picked up the report. He compared the numbers to the wire transfer statement. He looked at my mother, his expression one of pure disgust. Eleanor, he said, his voice like gravel. The numbers are identical. My mother stared at the paper, her composure finally cracking. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a hatred so profound it made me flinch. You, she whispered. You did this. You did this to yourself, Mom, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Suddenly, she slammed her hands on the table, standing up so fast her chair screeched backward. The mask was gone. The monster was out. You ungrateful witch, she screamed, her voice echoing in the small room. I gave you a life. I gave you everything. This is my church. My reputation. And you've destroyed it. My father reached for her arm. Eleanor, stop. Sit down. She shook him off, her face contorted with rage.
No.
I will not sit down. She has poisoned you all against me with her lies. She was always a difficult, unappreciative child. I should have known she would turn on me. She pointed a trembling finger at me. You will have nothing. You hear me? Nothing. I will see to it. Pastor Mike stood up. Eleanor, that is enough, he said, his voice booming with authority. You have exposed yourself more than any document ever could. The board has heard enough. We will be voting on your immediate and permanent removal from all church positions and a full forensic audit. I strongly advise you to find a lawyer. My mother stared at him, her mouth agape. Then she looked around at the stony faces of the board members. She looked at my father, who was staring at the floor in shame. Finally, she looked back at me. Her expression was one of utter defeat. The fight was gone. She was broken. She turned without another word and stumbled out of the room. My father, after a moment's hesitation, followed her. The room was silent. Then, Pastor Mike turned to me. Laura, he said softly, on behalf of this church, I am profoundly sorry. You did the right thing. The hard thing, but the right thing. I just nodded, unable to speak. I had won. I had exposed her. But I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt empty. The war was over. Now I had to live in the ruins. The days following the board meeting were a whirlwind of quiet, decisive actions. Pastor Mike called me the next morning to confirm the outcome. My mother was permanently removed from the outreach committee and all other church leadership roles. A forensic accounting firm had been hired to conduct a full audit of the matriarch fund and all related accounts. The church's legal counsel was advising them on whether to press criminal charges. They are recommending it, Laura, Pastor Mike said, his voice heavy, given the amount and the deliberate nature of the deception. But they want to know your position. As a primary party in this, your wishes carry weight. I thought about it for a long moment. Did I want to see my mother in jail? The thought was horrifying, but the thought of her getting away with it was worse. I want the church to be made whole, I said carefully. And I want to guarantee that she can never be in a position of financial trust again. If pressing charges is the only way to ensure that, then that's what has to happen. I understand, he said.
Thank you, Laura.
The church will also be making a formal apology to Margaret Gable. That news brought me a small, genuine smile.
She deserves it, I said.
My next conversation was with my father. He called me 2 days after the meeting. His voice was hollow, exhausted. Laura, he began. We need to talk. I'm listening, I said, my tone neutral.
He sighed.
Your mother, she's completely fallen apart. She won't leave her room. She won't talk to anyone. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. I didn't want her to suffer. I just wanted the lies to stop. Are you, he asked, a hint of accusation in his voice. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To destroy her? The old anger flared inside me.
No, Dad.
That's what you still don't understand. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted to protect myself. She's the one who chose to build her life on theft and lies. She destroyed herself. All I did was turn on the light.
He was silent for a while.
I could hear his strained breathing. The money from the church, the lawyers told us they expected to be paid back. All of it. We'll have to sell the house. Our home. The news hit me harder than I expected. The house I grew up in. It was another casualty of her choices. That's a consequence of her actions, Dad, I said softly. She's my wife, Laura, he said, his voice breaking. I have to stand by her. I know you do, I said. But you need to understand something. My relationship with you can never be the same. You saw what she was. You saw the way she treated me my whole life, and you chose to look away because it was easier. You asked me to apologize after she hit me. That's something I will never forget. I was trying to hold my family together, he whispered. You're trying to hold her world together. I corrected him. At my expense. I can't be a part of that anymore. I love you, Dad. But I can't have a relationship with you that requires me to pretend her abuse didn't happen. The enabling has to stop. It was a painful, difficult conversation, but it was necessary. I was drawing a boundary not just with my mother, but with the entire system that had allowed her to thrive. Then there was Becca. She sent me a single, furious text. I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I replied with one sentence. She is the one who stole from a charity, Becca.
She didn't respond.
Her world had been upended too. Her status as the daughter of the beloved church matriarch was gone. Now she was the daughter of a disgraced embezzler. The social fallout for her would be significant, and I couldn't find it in myself to feel sorry for her. The most positive conversation I had was with Mrs. Gable. I called to tell her what happened. When I told her the pastor was going to issue a formal apology to her, she was silent for a moment. Well, I'll be, she finally said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. It only took 6 years. I couldn't have done it without you, I told her sincerely. Nonsense, she said briskly. You had the courage to fight. I just gave you a little ammunition. Now, what about you, dear? What will you do now? The condo, I said. I have to sell it. It's tainted. The church's lawyers and I have agreed that the proceeds from the sale will first go to pay back the down payment amount directly to the church's restitution fund. Whatever is left after that, and the mortgage is paid off, is mine to keep. It was the only way to feel clean. I didn't want a single penny that had come from her scheme. Selling the condo was a strange experience. It was the physical manifestation of my mother's control, and letting it go felt like an exorcism. The sale went through quickly. After paying back the church and clearing the mortgage, I was left with a modest but significant amount of money. It was my own, truly my own, earned from the equity I had paid into for over a year and the rising market. It was my fresh start. I found a new apartment to rent in a different part of the city. It was smaller than the condo, but it felt like a palace. No one had a key except me. No one would show up unannounced. The silence and the freedom were intoxicating. A few months later, I received a final update from Pastor Mike. The audit had uncovered the full extent of my mother's theft, which was even more than we initially thought. She had been skimming from the fund for years. Faced with irrefutable evidence, she had accepted a plea deal to avoid a public trial. She was sentenced to 5 years of probation, a hefty fine, and was legally barred from ever holding a fiduciary position again. They had sold their house to pay the restitution and fines, and had moved into a small rental. She had lost everything she valued: her home, her reputation, her social standing. My life, on the other hand, was just beginning. I was thriving at my job. I was reconnecting with friends I had neglected during the years I was under my mother's thumb. I was even dating someone, a kind man who found my independence to be my most attractive quality. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that Easter Sunday. The sting of the slap, the quiet drive away, the cold resolve that settled in my heart. I didn't set out to destroy my mother. I set out to save myself. Her destruction was simply the consequence of a life built on lies. She spent my entire life demanding that I show gratitude. In the end, I am grateful. I'm grateful for the slap that woke me up. I'm grateful for the courage I found in the face of fear. And most of all, I am grateful for the quiet, simple peace of a life that is finally, completely my own.